There are only 3 things I require in life: a quiet place, a fishing rod, and absolutely no people. So naturally, fate sent me a bleeding stranger instead. It was a perfect morning, sunlight dripping through the pine branches, the air smelling like wet moss and freedom. I had just started the serious business of doing nothing, rod in hand, toes in the pond, and Radish snoring beside me. He's a puppy, small enough to fit into a rice sack, with the appetite of a bandit and the brains of boiled cabbage. But he's loyal. Mostly. I was halfway through composing a poem about fish who never bite when something crashed through the underbrush. First, I thought it was a boar. Then I saw boots, expensive boots, attached to a man staggering toward the pond. He took 2 heroic steps, looked at me like I was his savior, and collapsed face-first into the mud. Of course, because the forest clearly needed more drama. I sighed. Radish barked once, unimpressed. The man was bleeding. A clean arrow wound through his shoulder, dark silk robes torn at the edges. Definitely not a bandit. Too clean. His hands were soft too, no calluses, no scars. A man like this had probably never touched anything rougher than a teacup. I poked him with a stick. Still alive. He groaned. Well, that's unfortunate. You nobles really have a talent for collapsing in the most inconvenient places. I muttered, setting the rod aside. I tore a strip from my sleeve, cleaned the wound with water from the pond, and yanked the arrow free. He hissed, eyes snapping open. Sharp, dark, and furious. You, he began. Yes, I'm a barbarian. You're in pain, and I'm ruining your precious robe. You're welcome. I cut in. He blinked, clearly unused to gratitude being optional. When the bleeding slowed, I sat back and crossed my arms. So, who shot you? Or did you just annoy a very dedicated archer? I was attacked by thieves, he said stiffly. His voice was low, cultured, the kind that belonged in a court hall, not a forest. Thieves, huh? Must have been impressed by your fashion sense. I glanced at his robe again, silk, embroidered cloud patterns, gold thread. Subtle, if your idea of subtlety is a peacock in mourning. He bristled. I was traveling for study, right? Because all scholars wander around dressed like walking ransom notes. The man's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to argue but was too polite to stoop to my level. Admirable. Stupid but admirable. Radish, sensing tension, decided to help. He trotted over, grabbed one of the stranger's boots in his mouth, and ran off like he'd just stolen a national treasure. Radish, that's not food, I shouted. The stranger tried to stand, realized he couldn't, and fell back with a wince. Your dog. Puppy. He's young and morally flexible. I corrected. The man gave me the look nobles reserve for servants who breathe too loudly. You should control him. Oh, I do. Just not successfully, I said. He exhaled through his nose, the universal sigh of people who have never been ignored before. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. I got him settled near the fire pit, tossed him a spare cloak, and stirred the pot of soup I'd been making. You hungry? He hesitated, then nodded once. I handed him a bowl. He sniffed it suspiciously as if I'd poisoned it. Relax. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't waste ingredients, I said. He gave me a look that said he wasn't sure if I was joking. To be fair, neither was I. After a few minutes, he asked, You live here. I exist here. Living sounds too ambitious. I corrected. You're a hermit? An enthusiast of quiet. He fell silent for a while, staring into the flames. The moon started climbing. Somewhere in the trees, crickets started gossiping. Finally, he spoke again, more quietly. You saved my life. I shrugged. Don't mention it. No, seriously, don't. I have a reputation to maintain. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. You're an unusual man. I prefer handsome wilderness intellectual, but I'll allow it. Radish returned at that exact moment, proudly dragging the stolen boot, now full of mud and bite marks. I sighed. See? He's just like his master. Brings back things nobody asked for. The stranger groaned and looked to the sky, muttering something about fate. I pretended not to hear. Later that night, after he'd fallen asleep by the fire, I studied him more closely. Even dirty and pale, he had that unmistakable air of nobility, the kind that clings like expensive perfume. A man born to command, not to bleed in the dirt beside idiots like me, which meant trouble. The kind that wore crowns and issued decrees. I should have left him. I really should have. But Radish had curled up beside him, tail wagging, and that was that. My puppy had made a decision. Fine, we'll keep him till he stops bleeding. Then he's on his own. The universe, as usual, was already laughing. Morning came bright and annoyingly cheerful. My guest stirred, sat up slowly, and frowned at the pond. His robe, cleaned and drying on a rock, looked slightly less like it had been through a battlefield. "Good morning, still alive. Congratulations," I said, stretching. He shot me a cold look. "You speak as if my survival inconveniences you." "It does," I admitted. "You bleed, you eat my soup, you attract arrows. You're like a traveling disaster." "I could leave," he said stiffly. "You could if you weren't still half dead. And missing a boot." Radish yawned loudly, as if in agreement. He glared at the puppy, then at me. "You have no respect." "Oh, I respect people who earn it. You, however, just fainted into my lunch area," I said cheerfully. His eyes flashed. Anger, pride, something else I couldn't name. "You're insufferable." "Thank you," I said. For a moment we just stared at each other, him all sharp edges and dignity, me too lazy to care. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Just once. Short, startled, like it escaped by accident. I blinked. "Careful. If you start smiling, people might think you're human." He ignored me, gaze drifting to the pond. "What's your name?" "Liang Yun." "Wandering disappointment." "Zhao." "One, a traveling scholar," he said after a pause, clearly making it up. I raised a brow. "And I'm the Emperor's personal fishing instructor." He looked uncomfortable. I grinned. "Relax, Scholar Zhao. Your secret's safe. I don't care who you really are, as long as you don't bleed on my fish again." He shook his head, lips almost smiling. By the time the sun hit its peak, he was resting quietly, Radish snoring beside him. I leaned back, eyes half closed, thinking maybe the day wasn't entirely ruined. There are few things I hate more than being interrupted during breakfast. Bandits are one of them. It started with the unmistakable crunch of boots in dry leaves. Too many for hunters, too clumsy for soldiers. I was stirring porridge, minding my own lazy business, while the so-called scholar was still pretending not to wince every time he moved his injured shoulder. "Visitors," I said. He blinked. "Bandits. Probably, or local admirers. I am, after all, devastatingly handsome," I replied. He gave me that same flat, royal stare I was starting to recognize as his default face. "We should prepare." I yawned. "You can prepare. I'll observe. It builds character." The bushes rustled, and out came 6 men with the collective hygiene of a sewer. They carried rusty blades and the confidence of people who had never fought anyone competent. "Hand over your money," the leader barked. "Do I look like I have money?" I asked, gesturing at my patched robe. He squinted. "The scholar looks rich." I sighed. "Congratulations. You've just doomed yourselves." The scholar stiffened beside me. I could practically hear his royal pride sizzling. "Stay behind me," he said. "Oh no, after you, your education should be enough," I said sweetly. The first bandit lunged. I sidestepped, kicked his leg, and sent him rolling into the pond. Another tried to grab me. I tossed my porridge spoon at his face, then tripped him with the fishing rod. Lazy efficiency, my specialty. Running from problems efficiently is a lost art. People waste energy fighting instead of using gravity and poor decisions to their advantage. I lectured between punches. The scholar, I still refused to call him by name, drew a sword. A real sword hidden in his luggage. He moved with precision, fluid and deadly. His strike so clean it almost ruined my morning. I froze mid-swing. "Ha!" He noticed my stare and immediately slowed down, pretending to stumble like a drunk goat. Too late. I'd seen the truth. When the last bandit ran screaming into the forest, I dusted off my sleeves and looked at him. Not bad for a scholar, or should I say, a liar? I said. He froze. I learned from a tutor, he said quickly. Oh yes, must have been quite the tutor. The ghost of some legendary general who conveniently gave free lessons to random bookworms. His jaw clenched. You mock everything. Only the unbelievable, which in your case is most things, I said. Radish returned then, dragging a fallen bandit's glove like a trophy. Patted his head. Good boy. You contributed nothing, as usual. The scholar swordsman whatever glared. You could show some gratitude. I didn't let you get hit again. That's gratitude, I said. He opened his mouth, then closed it like he couldn't decide whether to strangle me or lecture me. I decided it was a good time to end the discussion. By noon, we'd set up camp by a riverside. The water was clear, shallow, and blessedly cold, perfect for washing off the smell of bandit stupidity. While I was skipping stones, I heard a splash behind me. The scholar was kneeling by the river, trying to wash his bloodied robe, and failing, spectacularly. Stop, you're abusing the fabric, I said. He turned. I can manage. You clearly can't. You nobles can't survive 5 minutes outside your silk walls. Can you? I am not a noble, he said, eyes narrowing. Right? Just a humble scholar who wields a sword like a royal guard and uses perfume more expensive than my entire wardrobe, I said. His ears went pink. You don't have to. I know, but watching you do it hurts my soul, I said. I dunked the robe in the water, scrubbed it with river sand, and handed it back. There. See? Functional, efficient, unpretentious. Unlike you. He glared, which only made me grin harder. You're welcome, Scholar Zhao One. He said nothing, probably counting to 10 in royal patience. Then, of course, Radish decided to leap into the river like a flying dumpling. The splash soaked both of us. The scholar gasped. I sputtered. Radish surfaced triumphantly, tongue lolling, and started swimming in proud circles. For a heartbeat, I thought the scholar would yell. Instead, he laughed. Soft, honest, completely unguarded. I blinked. You can do that? He smiled faintly. Do what? Be human. His smile faded into an exasperated sigh. You never stop talking, do you? Only when unconscious. We built a small fire as the sky deepened into indigo. He sat on one side, staring into the flames, his expression unreadable. I watched him for a while, the set of his shoulders, the faint crease in his brow. Even exhausted, he carried himself like someone used to being obeyed. So, what's your real story, You don't strike me as the wandering type, I said finally. He hesitated. My family wanted me to travel, to learn the hardships of the world. I snorted. And you learned arrows hurt. He gave me a look that might have been amusement or irritation, maybe both. You're not an easy person to read. Good. If I were easy to read, people would try to fix me, I said. Silence stretched. Crickets sang. Radish snored. I leaned back on my elbows, watching the moon ripple across the water. You know, for a man who bleeds easily and lies poorly, you're surprisingly tolerable, I said. He turned his head slightly. That's the closest thing to a compliment you've given me. Don't get used to it. A soft breeze stirred the fire. The air between us felt lighter somehow, less like two strangers stuck together, more like something uncertain but not unpleasant. He was looking at me then, really looking. His eyes caught the firelight, dark, steady, and far too intense for my peace of mind. I suddenly found the moon fascinating. Then, without warning, he leaned slightly closer. Just slightly. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, smell the faint hint of cedar and smoke. My breath hitched before I could stop it. Careful, you'll ruin your scholar act if you start making eyes at commoners, I said quietly. He didn't move away. You talk too much, he murmured. Someone has to fill the silence. I shot back, but my voice was softer than I wanted it to be. Then bark. Loud, sharp, perfectly timed. Radish had woken, tail wagging furiously, clearly delighted by ruining dramatic moments. We both jerked back, and I swore under my breath. The scholar cleared his throat. You should rest. Right, good talk, Scholar One. Try not to stab me in my sleep, I said, lying down immediately, mostly to avoid saying something stupid. He chuckled quietly. Only if you stop snoring. I don't snore, I said. You do, like a bear, he said. I threw a twig at him without opening my eyes. Good night. Good night, Liang Yun. The way he said my name, careful, unfamiliar, but warm, stuck in my chest longer than it should have. I fell asleep to the sound of the river, Radish's soft breathing, and the steady rhythm of someone pretending not to watch me across the fire. Next morning, I should have known something was wrong when the forest went quiet. No birds, no wind, not even Radish snoring. Just silence, the kind that means either ghosts or soldiers. Considering my luck lately, I was betting soldiers. The scholar was sitting near the fire, staring at the river with his usual tragic intensity, as if he'd lost both his kingdom and his favorite teacup. I was about to tease him about it when the first shout came. Your Highness! You're what now? Before I could process that, men in armor burst through the trees. 10 of them moving with military precision, not the lost bandit kind. They spotted him, dropped to one knee, and shouted again in unison. Your Highness, we've found you. I blinked, looked at him, looked at them, looked back at him. He closed his eyes like a man accepting a hangman's noose. Oh no, you've got to be kidding me. The one in front, clearly their captain, looked like he'd swallowed an entire spear for breakfast. We feared the worst, Your Highness. The court has been in chaos. Enough, said the scholar. No, not scholar. Apparently Crown Prince. His tone changed, cold, commanding, smooth as a blade drawn slow. I told you to remain at the northern post. The captain looked like he wanted to argue, then saw the expression on his face and thought better of it. Meanwhile, I just sat there, jaw somewhere near my knees. So, I've been feeding soup to the most uptight man in the empire. Figures. The captain's eyes darted to me, horrified that a random commoner was still breathing within 10 feet of royal silk. Who is this? The crown prince raised a hand. He saved my life. The soldiers immediately fell into a synchronized bow so deep I thought they might dig holes. I waved awkwardly. Please don't. I'm allergic to ceremony. The prince looked at me, eyes steady. You will come with us to the capital. I froze mid-wave. Come again. As reward for saving me, you will be honored and compensated. Compensated, right? You mean locked in a gilded cage, forced to bow at shiny floors, and told when I can sneeze. No thanks. I repeated. He frowned. You misunderstand. I understand perfectly. You're used to people saying yes. I'm not one of them, I said. Radish barked approvingly, which I took as moral support. The captain looked like he'd rather eat his own helmet than witness this conversation. Your Highness, shall I have this man escorted? Not yet, the prince said, never taking his eyes off me. He stood, tall, immaculate even after days in the forest, the kind of posture that screams, I own taxes. You saved my life, Liang Yun. You cannot just vanish. Can and will, that's my specialty. Vanishing, napping, and avoiding imperial nonsense, I said. His expression tightened. You think this is nonsense? Yes, highly polished, dangerous nonsense. For a moment, silence. Then his voice dropped, soft but sharp enough to cut. You don't understand the debt you've incurred. Debt? I didn't save you for favors. You were bleeding on my fishing spot. What was I supposed to do? Let you ruin the water? One of the soldiers gasped like I just insulted the heavens. The prince, to his credit, didn't flinch. But his gaze hardened, that quiet, royal kind of anger that doesn't explode. It just freezes everything around it. Do you always talk this way? He asked. Only when I'm awake. Radish trotted over and started sniffing the captain's boot. The man looked terrified to move. I picked the puppy up and sighed. Listen, Your Highness, I appreciate the thought, But I'm not palace material. I like sleeping outdoors, eating when I want, and not being executed for speaking out of turn. So let's part ways before you regret being rescued." He looked at me for a long time, too long. His expression softened just slightly, and that was somehow worse than his anger. "You saved me, and I don't forget debts," he said. "Well, start learning. Freedom's lighter when you're not dragging gratitude behind you," I said. For a second, I thought he might smile. He didn't. Instead, he nodded to his captain. The captain cleared his throat. "By imperial order," he said, already pulling out a scroll, "you are to accompany His Highness back to the capital as his honored guest." He finished quickly, clearly valuing his life. "Honored prisoner, you mean?" "Guest," the prince said firmly. "Guest who can't refuse?" "Precisely," I groaned. "This is kidnapping, not gratitude." Radish barked again, wagging his tail like betrayal was his favorite game. The soldiers moved in, polite but unyielding. One even tried to take my bag. I glared. "Touch my things and I'll feed you to the puppy." They hesitated. "Good. Fear me, imperial lackeys." The prince approached, his tone gentler now. "Liang Yun, I would rather you come willingly," he said, like the words cost him something. "Then you'll have to lower your standards," I said. He sighed. That quiet, regal sigh that somehow manages to sound disappointed in your entire bloodline. "So stubborn. You should try it sometime." He met my gaze. Intense, unreadable, frustratingly beautiful in that dangerous way that makes you want to argue forever just to keep hearing his voice. "Damn him," the captain coughed. "Your Highness, we should depart before sunset." The prince's jaw flexed. "Prepare the horses." I stood there as they saddled up, debating whether it was worth running. Probably not. I could fight 10 bandits, but not 10 armored professionals. And certainly not with the crown prince glaring at me like I'd insulted his ancestors. So I did what any sensible man would do. I complained. Loudly. "You know, normal people say thank you with words, not armed escorts," I said as they helped me onto a horse. The prince mounted his own horse with the ease of someone born in a saddle. "You'll have your thanks in the capital." "Oh, good. I can't wait to be ceremonially suffocated," I said. He didn't reply, just glanced over, the faintest twitch of amusement at the corner of his mouth. Radish sat in my lap, tail wagging, completely unaware we were being kidnapped in the name of etiquette. As the forest faded behind us, I muttered, "I knew I should have let you drown." He turned his head slightly. "What was that?" "Nothing, Your Highness. Just admiring your kingdom's efficient approach to abduction." He actually laughed. A low, quiet sound that made my stomach do something deeply undignified. "Be silent, Liang Yun," he said, still smiling. "No promises, Your Highness. If I'm being dragged into imperial trouble, I plan to complain the entire way," I said. Radish barked as if seconding the motion. And that's how I, Liang Yun, peaceful fisherman and part-time philosopher, became an unwilling guest of the Empire's most dangerous man. The trees thinned, the road widened, and the palace-bound nightmare began. The capital smells like money, incense, and hypocrisy. I'd been there for exactly 10 minutes when I decided I hated it. Everything was too shiny, gold roofs, polished marble, people who walked like they owned the ground. Even the pigeons looked judgmental. And me? I was the wild mountain stray being dragged through the palace gates, covered in road dust, clutching a squirming puppy, and praying not to sneeze on something sacred. Radish chose that exact moment to bark at a minister's hat. I swear the man nearly fainted. The crown prince, yes, we're calling him that now, since apparently we're done with pretending, rode ahead of me, calm and composed like he wasn't responsible for my current kidnapping. We stopped before a massive hall draped in red silk. A swarm of servants descended to clean him, rewrap him, and generally erase any sign he'd ever been near dirt. Meanwhile, I stood there holding Radish and wondering which cosmic crime I'd committed to deserve this. Then an old lady with enough jewels to blind a horse appeared. Everyone bowed so low they practically disappeared into the floor. "The Empress Dowager," someone whispered. I bowed too, mostly because I didn't want to be executed for bad manners. She looked me up and down like I was a fish she hadn't decided to cook yet. So this is the man who saved my grandson. Unfortunately, I said before my brain could intervene. Zhao Yunxiu, the crown prince, coughed into his sleeve. The sound suspiciously resembled a stifled laugh. The Empress Dowager's eyes twinkled. Dangerous woman. You're bold. Habit. Talking gets me in trouble wherever I go. I'm consistent. She smiled, a terrifying imperial smile. Consistency is admirable. And useful. That was my first warning. I should have run then. Instead, she announced, to preserve auspicious fate and quell the rumors of the crown prince's injury, I decree that Liang Yun shall be named His Highness's consort. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then my voice, much too loud. I'm sorry, you're what now? The chamber erupted. Servants gasping, ministers sputtering. Radish barking like he understood the scandal. I turned to Zhao Yunxiu. This is your fault. He looked equally shocked, which would have been comforting if I weren't too busy panicking. Grandmother, this is unnecessary. He began carefully. She waved a jeweled hand. Nonsense. The heavens sent him to save you. It is fate. Fate has terrible taste. I muttered. The dowager ignored me. The wedding shall be held tomorrow. Good omens wait for no man. Tomorrow. I don't even own proper shoes. I yelped. Then you shall be given a pair, she said serenely. And just like that, my freedom died under a pile of red silk and good intentions. The next day, I was dressed in layers of embroidered robes that weighed more than radish and smelled like old incense. Palace servants fluttered around me like anxious birds, whispering instructions I ignored immediately. The wedding itself was a blur of chanting, bowing, and me desperately trying not to trip. Zhao Yunxiu stood beside me looking every inch the perfect prince. Calm, solemn, slightly murderous. When the final bow was done, I leaned toward him and whispered, So I'm a political bandage now? He didn't even blink. You're remarkably noisy for a bandage. Wait till you see what I do when I itch. He inhaled deeply, as if regretting all his life choices. The so-called wedding night was the highlight of my humiliation. They led us into a heavily perfumed chamber filled with candles, red curtains, and enough awkward expectation to suffocate a cow. A servant placed a jar of wine between us, bowed, and fled. I stared at Zhao Yunxiu. He stared at me. Well, might as well make the best of it, I said, grabbing the jar. Half the jar later, I was sprawled on the bed, the world pleasantly fuzzy. He sat on a chair like someone had glued a broomstick down his back. You are stiff as a board. I slurred, pointing at him. He frowned. You're drunk. And you're boring, see? We both observe obvious things, I declared. Radish barked from the corner as if agreeing. He sighed. Go to sleep. Working on it? I mumbled, then promptly fell asleep on top of him. Literally. When I woke up, sunlight was creeping through the curtains, and my pillow was suspiciously warm and breathing. Zhao Yunxiu was staring at the ceiling like a man questioning all his life decisions. Morning, I said cheerfully, rolling off him. Sleep well, Your Highness? He gave me a look sharp enough to shave with. You snore. Compliment accepted. I sat up, stretching, only to notice 3 maids standing at the door, eyes wide, whispering behind their sleeves. Gossip spreads fast here. Should I wave? I muttered. Don't you dare, Zhao Yunxiu said, getting up. His ears were pink. Too easy. By midday, I was nearly enjoying myself. Being royal meant endless food, fancy tea, and the thrill of making ministers twitch. The downside? I couldn't breathe without ceremony. Every servant bowed. Every guard watched. Even Radish got a gold collar. I'd tried escaping once, but the palace had more gates than I had patience. Zhao Yunxiu caught me halfway over a wall. Planning to run? He asked. Planning to live. You nobles do too much standing still, I said. His lips twitched. You really can't help yourself? Can you? Nope. If I stop talking, I'll die, I said. He sighed. The royal sound of long suffering. Come back before the Empress Dowager sees you. I shrugged. She likes me. Said I'm fate's gift. Fate has terrible taste, he said without missing a beat. Finally, something we agree on. That evening, we somehow ended up in the same garden. Me sitting on a wall, him trying to read under the lantern light. You really don't relax, do you? I asked. He didn't look up. Relaxation is a privilege, not a habit. See, that's your problem. You think too much. Try doing nothing sometime. Builds character. Nothing, he repeated. Yup. He finally looked up, eyes catching the lantern glow. You bring enough nothings for both of us. Ah, is that affection I hear? I said, grinning. He set the scroll down. You're impossible. And yet here I am, married to you. Tragic, really? He stood, crossing the few steps between us. You talk as if you regret it. I regret the robe. It itches. That's accurate, he said softly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to find wine that doesn't come with destiny attached. I said brightly. As I walked off, I could still feel his stare burning between my shoulder blades. And for reasons I refused to examine, I didn't hate it. They say the palace is a place of elegance, dignity, and restraint. They're wrong. It's a nest of men who wear shiny hats and argue about how many blessings fit into a teacup. I learned that the hard way by accident. See, I wasn't supposed to attend the morning court assembly. I just got lost trying to find the kitchen. Radish, my loyal partner in crime, trotted ahead with his tail wagging like he owned the place. One wrong corridor later, I stepped into a hall so big it could have fit my entire village. The air buzzed with tension. The kind that says, one wrong word and you'll lose your head. I blinked. Rows of ministers turned. Silence. Oh, this isn't the kitchen, I said. Dozens of eyes stared at me. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered, that's the consort. Zhao Yunxiu stood at the front, dressed in layers of gold-trimmed robes, expression carved from ice. When he saw me, something behind his eyes flickered between horror and amusement. Liang Yun, why are you here? He said. Tone very, Your Majesty, I beg you, not now. I was looking for breakfast. Got bored waiting for servants who take longer than a sunrise. I said truthfully, you'd think I'd announced a rebellion. A few officials dropped their scrolls. One visibly prayed. Then, because I hate silence, I added, nice meeting, though. Very tense. What's everyone fighting about? A general cleared his throat like he wished I would vanish. Your Highness, we were discussing supply lines to the northern border. Ah, war logistics. My favorite breakfast topic, I said, stepping forward. Consort Liang, Zhao Yunxiu warned, voice low. But it was too late. I saw the map spread out before them. Roads marked wrong, supply routes crossing mountains even goats wouldn't climb. It was a disaster waiting to happen. I pointed at the map. You're sending grain through that pass? That's flooded half the year. You'll lose more wagons than you save. Move it 2 valleys east, there's a trade route the locals use. Shorter, safer, and cheaper. Silence. The general puffed up like a toad. With respect, Consort Liang, this is a military discussion. With respect, General, your plan's terrible, but I'm sure it'll look great written on your gravestone. A few ministers gasped. One actually dropped his fan. Zhao Yunxiu's mouth twitched, the tiniest ghost of a smile. The emperor, yes, the emperor himself, sat at the head of the hall, watching me with the calm amusement of a man who's seen every kind of idiocy and found a new flavor. And who taught the consort military logistics? He said slowly. I gave a polite bow. Starving, Your Majesty, teaches efficiency faster than any academy. Someone choked behind me. Zhao Yunxiu looked like he wanted to die. The emperor chuckled, actually chuckled. Interesting. Proceed, General. But do adjust the route. Perhaps His Highness's consort has a point. And just like that, Liang Yun, professional nap enthusiast, accidentally restructured imperial supply lines. When the assembly ended, I was escorted, and by escorted, I mean herded back to the crown prince's study. The door slammed behind me. Zhao Yunxiu pinched the bridge of his nose. You walked into court. Uninvited. With a dog. Correction, the dog walked in. I followed. I said, Liang Yun. I leaned against a pillar, arms crossed. You're welcome, by the way. I just saved your army from starving. He stared at me. You humiliated a general in front of my father. He humiliated himself with that map. I shot back. He shook his head, but the corners of his mouth betrayed him. The ministers will talk for weeks. Let them, they need a hobby, I said. He sighed, that familiar, helpless sound I'd come to enjoy provoking. You truly don't understand how dangerous this court can be. Oh, I do. I just refuse to play their game, I said softly. Our eyes met. Something unspoken hung between us. Tension, curiosity, maybe a hint of admiration. Then he turned away. You should stay out of the throne room next time. My father might not find you amusing, he said finally. Next time, I'll bring snacks, I said. He groaned. I don't know whether to confine you or thank you. Do both. Keeps life interesting, I suggested. That night, sleep refused to come. The palace was too quiet, too perfect, too still. Freedom hummed at the edges of my thoughts like a bird beating against glass. So I climbed the roof. It wasn't as hard as you'd think. The palace guards were used to dignified nobles, not mountain-trained idiots with good balance. I perched near a ridge, looking at the sprawl of lanterns below, the whole empire glittering under a fat silver moon. Radish curled beside me, snoring softly. You'll get fleas on the royal tiles, I whispered, scratching behind his ears. You shouldn't be up here. I didn't startle. Zhao Yunxiu had a way of appearing quietly, like a shadow that disapproved of your decisions. He climbed up beside me, robes trailing like moonlight. Shouldn't you be sleeping? I asked. Couldn't, he said simply. Ah, too much dignity in the bed. Not enough air. He shot me a look. You really can't help yourself. Nope, comes naturally. For a while we sat in silence, the wind whispering through the roof tiles. From up here the world felt smaller and him somehow less untouchable. I didn't thank you, he said finally. For what? Embarrassing your court. For being right, he said. And for surviving them. I smirked. You're welcome, though I still want breakfast. He smiled faintly. I'll have it arranged. We lapsed back into quiet, the kind that wasn't awkward, the kind that hummed with something I didn't dare name. His hand brushed mine by accident, or maybe not. The contact was brief, light, but it set something stupid fluttering in my chest. Careful, Your Highness. If anyone sees you holding hands with your scandalous consort, the ministers might explode. Then, he said softly, not moving away, let them. I turned, meeting his gaze. The moonlight caught his profile, calm, steady, and stupidly beautiful. For once, I had nothing to say. Radish yawned, ruining the moment entirely. I laughed, the sound startling against the night. You, me, and the pup, what a fine royal family we make, I said. Zhao Yunxiu smiled. A real one this time, small and quiet and entirely human. Maybe the empire could use a little chaos, he said. I grinned. Now you're starting to sound like me. He looked out at the city lights. That might not be a bad thing. For once, I didn't argue. The stars above didn't care for crowns or titles, and for a brief, stolen moment, neither did we. If you've ever wondered how long it takes for a palace to lose its collective sanity, the answer is 2 weeks. Specifically, 2 weeks after I adopted 6 stray cats. In my defense, Radish looked lonely. He's a social creature. Also, I was bored. And when I'm bored, bad things happen. At first, the cats were adorable. Tiny, fluffy, and surprisingly judgmental. But then they multiplied like imperial edicts. Within days, the palace looked like a furry uprising. Radish loved it. He herded them around like a tiny general, tail wagging proudly. The servants? Less enthusiastic. Consort Liang, the cats have stolen the silk offerings. One brave maid said. I glanced up from my breakfast. Good taste. Tell them to aim for the gold next. She paled and fled. By day 3, I was officially the most feared man in the palace. Not because of power, but because no one could walk 10 steps without stepping on a cat toy. Zhao Yunxiu, of course, remained calm. Too calm. That's how I knew he was furious. He summoned me to his study, expression unreadable. "You've created chaos," he said. "I prefer the term enrichment program." He blinked slowly, like he was counting to 10 in royal patience. "The Minister of Rights sent a complaint. One of your animals destroyed an important memorial." "That's ridiculous," I said, just as Radish trotted in, carrying a very chewed piece of parchment. We both stared at him. "Ah, that one's on me." Liang Yun. His voice was dangerously calm. Technically, it was the dog. He closed his eyes. "You're banned from leaving the palace grounds until further notice." "What?" "Consider it reflective isolation." Reflective isolation. That sounds like something you give traitors, not innocent men with a talent for animal management. I repeated, but His Highness was immovable, the royal equivalent of a wall carved from ice and duty. So fine. If I was trapped, I might as well make it entertaining. By day 2 of my punishment, I decided the palace staff needed exercise. I gathered a few bored maids and guards in the courtyard. "Lesson 1, I said, holding up a broomstick like a sword. "How to defend yourself from pushy nobles." They laughed. I demonstrated. They stopped laughing. Turns out, even broom martial arts can be effective. Soon, word spread, and by the end of the week, half the servants were sneaking out to join my lessons. I called it freedom training. They called it terrifyingly fun. And since I was on a roll, I also wrote a little essay titled The Freedom Manifesto. It was mostly jokes about bureaucracy and why rules are bad for digestion. I left a few copies lying around for amusement. 3 days later, half the palace was quoting it. The Minister of Personnel accused me of philosophical corruption. I accused him of having no sense of humor. When Zhao Yunxiu finally stormed into my courtyard, I was in the middle of teaching a maid how to use a tray as a shield. "Liang Yun." His tone could have frozen fire. "Your Highness, would you like to join the class? You could use the flexibility." I said brightly. "Enough, you've turned my palace into a circus." He snapped. I shrugged. "Better than a funeral." He stepped closer, eyes flashing. "Do you have any idea what you've done? My father thinks I can't control my own consort." I tilted my head. "Well, technically, you can't." "Liang Yun." His voice dropped an octave. "Dangerous." "Zhao Yunxiu, you're welcome. I gave your servants morale. Maybe try thanking me?" I countered sweetly. He exhaled sharply, struggling between fury and something else. "You think everything's a game. It's the only way to enjoy your rules," I said. "Not everything can be laughed off." "Maybe not. But if I stop laughing, I'll suffocate." I said, "Quieter now." That gave him pause. Just a flicker, but enough to make the air shift between us. His anger softened. "You!" Whatever he meant to say, he didn't finish. Instead, he took a step forward. Then another. My back hit the wall. His hand braced beside my head. His breath brushed my cheek. Steady, but trembling just enough to betray him. "Zhao Yunxiu, you're awfully close," I said low. He didn't move away. "You drive me mad." "Good. Means you're still human," I whispered. His gaze dropped to my mouth. The world tilted. For a heartbeat, I thought knew he was going to kiss me. Then he stopped. Inches away. His jaw tightened. Duty won again. I could feel his breath, his hesitation, his restraint so thick it hurt to look at. "You should finish what you start, Your Highness," I murmured. He stepped back like I'd burned him. "Go back to your quarters," he said, voice hoarse. "Afraid of the servants gossiping?" I said lightly, though my pulse was still hammering. "Afraid I won't stop next time." That shut me up. For once, I had no clever comeback. He turned and walked away. All perfect posture and unresolved tension, while Radish patted in, head tilted like he wanted to ask what just happened. "Don't look at me like that. I'm confused too," I told to Radish. Radish yawned. Typical. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The palace was too still again, the calm before another storm. I sat by the window, staring out at the garden. The cats prowled through the shadows like tiny ghosts. Somewhere in the distance, a night watchman muttered about divine punishment. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was divine punishment. I'd come here chasing nothing, and somehow ended up tangled in politics, chaos, and one very stubborn prince who made my chest ache in ways I didn't have words for. I sighed. Freedom's overrated, except when it isn't. I told Radish. He wagged his tail, unimpressed. Fine, we'll survive this too, I said, and from the corner of my eye, I could almost imagine Zhao Yunxiu standing in some other wing of the palace, wide awake, thinking the same damn thing. You'd think that after the cat incident, the manifesto scandal, and almost kissing the crown prince, twice, the palace would have learned to keep me out of important matters. They had not. Apparently, rebellion was brewing at the border. Something about grain taxes, corrupt governors, and a few thousand very angry soldiers. The entire court was in chaos. Ministers running everywhere, generals shouting, servants trembling like pigeons in a thunderstorm. So naturally, I decided it was the perfect time to sneak into the war council. In my defense, they didn't say I couldn't. Technically, I was still banned from official meetings, but no one said anything about unofficial lurking. Besides, I'd been bored for 3 days straight. That's practically fatal. Radish was my lookout. I tied my hair up, borrowed a servant's uniform, and walked right in. The trick was confidence. Walk like you belong and people start believing it. The council chamber was a pressure cooker. Zhao Yunxiu sat near the head of the table, expression unreadable. Maps covered the floor. Generals argued about troop movements. Ministers argued about the generals. And the emperor, serene and terrifying, listened like a man deciding who deserved to keep their head. I slipped into a corner, grabbed a tray, and pretended to pour tea. For 10 minutes, it worked. Then I actually started listening, and nearly choked. They were planning to send 20,000 troops straight into a mountain pass that every traveling merchant knew was a death trap. I set down the teapot a little too hard. Everyone turned. A general frowned. Who let this servant speak? Just a humble tea-bringer, sir. But if I may, sending men through that pass will end with a lot more funerals than victories. I said, bowing. Silence fell. Zhao Yunxiu froze mid-breath. His eyes flicked to me. Recognition, disbelief, and that silent, I swear, Liang Yun, look I'd grown fond of. The general puffed up like a toad. You dare question? Yes, since you asked. You're ignoring the river to the south. It floods in spring, right? You could use it to cut off supply lines instead of walking into an ambush, I said. Murmurs rippled. The emperor raised an eyebrow. And how do you know this? I bowed again, praying my disguise held. Heard it from a friend who's terrible at gambling and excellent at geography. Zhao Yunxiu's jaw clenched, but his eyes, those traitorous, amused eyes, glimmered. The emperor leaned back. Continue. I pointed at the map. Move the main troops east, use smaller units through the woods to flank. Avoid direct confrontation, bleed them through supply control. You'll win without wasting soldiers. The hall went still. Then the emperor smiled faintly. The tea servants are talented these days. Zhao Yunxiu stepped forward, calm and composed. A sound suggestion, father. I was about to propose the same. He was what? The emperor nodded. Then do so. Let it be recorded as your strategy. As the meeting continued, Zhao Yunxiu didn't glance my way again. Not once. I slipped out before anyone noticed, Radish trotting behind me with his tail high, as if he'd just overthrown a dynasty. 2 weeks later, the rebellion was crushed. Swiftly, cleanly, with minimal loss. The court was ecstatic. The emperor praised his son for brilliant strategy. And me? I wasn't even supposed to exist in that equation. I wasn't angry. Well, maybe a little. Mostly I was confused. Zhao Yunxiu hadn't said a word about it. Not a thank you, not even a sarcastic comment. Just quiet distance. So I broke into his study. He didn't look surprised when I pushed the door open. Just tired. You shouldn't be here, he said. Technically, I shouldn't be anywhere. The palace keeps banning me. I replied. He sighed. You're reckless. And you're ungrateful. That got his attention. Ungrateful. Yes, I save your border, you get all the credit, and I don't even get a bowl of noodles out of it. Unbelievable. His lips twitched. Not a smile, exactly, but the ghost of one. You shouldn't have been there, Liang Yun. Clearly, I should have, or you'd still be arguing with men who think rivers are optional. I shot back. You could have been caught, he said sharply. If anyone had realized. What that I can think. Too late for that. I interrupted. He exhaled hard, pinching the bridge of his nose. You don't understand how dangerous court politics are. If the ministers suspected I'd listen to you, they'd what? Gossip? They already do. He looked up then, something raw in his eyes. They'd use you against me. That shut me up. He stood, crossing the room slowly, deliberately. I didn't take credit because I wanted to. I did it to keep you safe. Safe? You mean bored? I said, laughing. His voice softened. Alive. That word hit differently. He wasn't mocking, wasn't posturing. Just honest. And God's help me, honesty from Zhao Yunxiu was rarer than a polite cat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was Radish snoring by the door. Finally, I said, quieter. You could have just told me. I knew you'd argue. You're right. But I'd have appreciated the gesture. I said. He stepped closer. The air between us tightened. His expression, that impossible mix of composure and vulnerability, made my stomach flip. Liang Yun, you drive me insane, he said quietly. That's mutual, I said, trying to sound casual. My throat betrayed me by going dry. His hand lifted slightly, like he might touch my face, but stopped midway. Again, always stopping. So I did what any sane man wouldn't. I leaned in and pressed a quick kiss to the corner of his mouth. He froze. Completely. I smirked. That's for lying well, for once. His eyes widened, then narrowed. You! But I was already walking away. Next time, I said over my shoulder. Just tell me when you need help. Saves both of us the trouble of pretending. Behind me, silence. Then, the faintest sound of a laugh. Low. Real. I turned at the door. Zhao Yunxiu was smiling. Not the polished, princely kind. The human kind. The one that made my chest ache. Don't look at me like that. You'll make me think you actually like me, I said, half grinning. He said nothing. Just looked. And that was worse. In the weeks that followed, something changed. He still scolded me. Still sighed when I teased the ministers. But there was warmth behind it now. He started visiting the gardens at dusk, where I'd lounge with Radish. Sometimes we talked politics. Sometimes nothing at all. Once he laughed, really laughed, at something stupid I said. The sound startled me so much I forgot the punchline. Maybe that's when it hit me. Somewhere between sarcasm and survival, I'd fallen for the man I'd sworn to mock forever. I wasn't about to admit it, of course. That'd ruin the fun. I'd always said palace life would kill me one day. Turns out I wasn't exaggerating. Started on a quiet night. Too quiet, actually. Radish wasn't barking. The cats weren't fighting. And no one was gossiping about my latest, disgraceful behavior. That should have been my first clue something was wrong. The second clue was the dagger that nearly took my ear off. I rolled aside as it embedded itself in the wall. Oh, lovely, assassins again. It's not a complete day until someone tries to stab me. I muttered. 3 figures dropped from the roof, faces masked, blades gleaming. Their movements were professional, fast, silent, efficient. Court assassins. The fancy kind. Radish growled. I pointed to a corner. Stay. You'll ruin the rugs. They lunged. Unfortunately for them, I wasn't just a pretty consort with bad manners. Before the palace, I'd survived bounty hunters, corrupt guards, and one overzealous goose farmer. Assassins were just better-dressed amateurs. One came at me from the left. Too predictable. I ducked, grabbed his wrist, and flipped him into the table. The second tried to flank me. I threw a teacup at his head. The third made it as far as a dramatic leap before my foot caught his ribs midair. In less than a minute, 3 unconscious bodies decorated the floor like broken dolls. I sighed, brushing dust off my sleeve. Next time, send better assassins. I get bored easily. But the amusement didn't last. Someone inside the palace wanted me dead. Not just discredited, not banished, dead. I'd ignored the whispers before, the small slights, the poisoned tea that accidentally went to my tray. But this was different. Freedom was calling again. And this time I was listening. By dawn, I'd packed what mattered. My sword, a few coins and radish. Everything else could rot in the gilded cage. The palace gates loomed ahead, huge and quiet. Rain had started to fall, thin, cold, merciless. It soaked through my robe, plastered my hair to my face. Perfect mood weather for bad decisions. Radish whimpered softly. I know he'll be angry, but better his anger than my funeral. I hesitated only once. Glancing back at the towers, at the faint light flickering in Zhao Yunxio's study. Maybe he was still awake, poring over reports, unaware his consort was walking out. Or maybe he already knew. Come on, before I change my mind. But the moment I stepped through the outer gate, a voice cut through the rain. Liang Yun. I froze. Of course he'd find me. He always did. Zhao Yunxio stood at the end of the path, drenched, cloak heavy with rain, eyes blazing like he'd walked straight out of a fever dream. I sighed. You should have stayed inside. You'll catch something royal and dramatic. He didn't answer, just kept walking toward me, slow and deliberate. You were leaving. Observant. That crown's really sharpening your eyesight, I said. His expression tightened. You think you can vanish without a word? After everything? Yes, it's my best skill. Liang Yun. His voice cracked, just slightly. Why? I looked away. Because I'm tired of watching my back in every hallway. Because someone in your lovely court decided my death would look good on paper. Because I don't belong here, Yunxio. He flinched at his own name on my tongue. You think I can't protect you? You could. But then you'd start a war over a man who can't stand still. And I'd rather be free than be your reason to break everything you've built. I said. The rain fell harder, relentless, drowning the silence between us. He stepped closer. You saved my life. Again and again. And you think I'd just let you walk away? I was hoping you'd be smart enough to. I said softly. Smart, that's what you call it? Running from me? He repeated bitterly. Running from this, from the walls, the rules, the endless bowing. You fit here. I never did. I corrected. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. You fit beside me. I almost laughed. Don't say things you can't keep. I'm not lying. His voice broke raw. The words stuck in his throat. He looked like a man on the edge of something terrifying. I love you, he said finally. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The rain swallowed everything but those 3 words. I froze. My heartbeat tripped over itself. Yunxio, you shouldn't say that. I said quietly. It's the truth and I'm done pretending it isn't. He said. I shook my head, trying to find the joke, the quip, anything to keep this from being real. You're soaked, exhausted, and making terrible choices. Maybe, but they're mine to make, he said, stepping closer. His hand rose to my face, trembling. Tell me you don't feel the same, and I'll let you go. That would have been the smart thing to do. Lie, smile, vanish. But I'd never been smart where he was concerned. Damn you. You make everything complicated. I whispered. His breath hitched. Then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, messy, furious. The kind of kiss that tasted like confession and goodbye all at once. The rain poured around us, cold and electric. His hand slid to the back of my neck. Mine curled into his soaked robe. For a second, the world disappeared. Then I pulled back, breathless. You really want to ruin my freedom, don't you? He smiled, small, sad, and too sincere. You ruined my peace first. That one hit like a blade. I wanted to laugh, to deflect, to say something stupid like, you're welcome, but my throat wouldn't work. So I did the only thing I could, stepped back. If you love me, let me go before I start believing this place could ever be enough. I said. He didn't move, just stood there, rain dripping down his lashes, watching me like I was tearing his heart out, which technically I was. Finally, he nodded. Go then, but don't expect me to stop searching. Wouldn't dream of it, I said, forcing a grin that didn't reach my eyes. I turned, whistled for Radish, and walked into the storm. Each step away felt like betrayal. Each drop of rain stung like guilt. When I glanced back once, just once, Zhao Yunxiu was still standing there, unmoving, a lone figure against the downpour. And for the first time, I hated the freedom I'd always chased. You'd think running away from the crown prince would end a story. Apparently, mine just turned into a government reform project. When I finally came back, yes, I came back, don't let Zhao Yunxiu tell you otherwise, the palace had changed. He was no longer the crown prince. He was the emperor. The youngest one in history, they said. Efficient, poised, merciless when he needed to be. Handsome, obviously. You're welcome, I gave him character development. The court looked at me like I was a ghost when I strolled in. Radish trotting proudly beside me and mud up to my knees. You are supposed to be gone. One minister hissed. I tried, but your assassins kept missing. I said. The new emperor nearly dropped his ink brush when he saw me. We just stared at each other. Him in his gold-trimmed robes, me dripping on his spotless floor. Back so soon? He asked coolly. I grinned. Miss me? He sighed. Long-suffering. You left without permission. And yet, I'm back without an invitation. Balance, I said, spreading my arms. He looked like he wanted to argue, but then Radish jumped into his lap, tail wagging, and that was the end of imperial composure. The entire council witnessed their divine ruler being licked on the chin by a muddy dog. It was glorious. After that, things got complicated. Somehow, I became the emperor's unofficial advisor on policies of practicality. A fancy title meaning I sat around making sarcastic comments that occasionally turned into laws. For example, when a minister proposed triple taxes for farmers, I said, sure, if you want the peasants to send you rocks instead of grain. Zhao Yunxiu didn't even blink, he just wrote something down. The next week, a new tax reform came out, lighter on commoners, smarter on logistics. Guess who got blamed for it? Me. His Majesty's consort has too much influence. The officials whispered, His Majesty's consort has excellent hearing. I whispered back to them one night at dinner. The gossip didn't stop, of course, but I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving in the palace. I was actually living. And Zhao Yunxiu, well, he'd changed too. He still had that imperial stiffness, but sometimes, when it was just us, he'd loosen his collar, lean back and laugh. The sound always startled me, like sunlight sneaking into a storm. One night, while we were reviewing documents, he was reading, I was napping. He said, You should know, I'm abolishing the consort restrictions. I cracked one eye open. You're what? No more confinement to the palace, you go where you want. No guards, no curfews. He said. I blinked at him. Are you trying to bribe me into staying? He smiled faintly. No, I'm letting you go properly this time. For a long second, I didn't know what to say. Freedom offered instead of stolen, that was new. You really have a habit of ruining my dramatic exits, I muttered. He chuckled. You have a habit of coming back anyway. Touché. So now that's our arrangement. I come and go as I please. I wander the countryside, drink bad wine, nap under trees. Every time I leave, he pretends to be angry, sends 10 guards to escort me discreetly, like I wouldn't notice men in shiny armor trying to hide behind bushes. Every time I return, the palace is brighter somehow. He doesn't say it, but I can tell. And me? I like to think I bring a little chaos to balance all his order. Like today, for example, the morning court was in full swing. Ministers droning about grain, trade, rebellion, the usual parade of self-importance. Zhao Yunxiu sat on the throne, calm as ever, pretending to listen. And then the doors slammed open. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. There was a goose parade. I announced, marching in, muddy boots, radish in one arm, wildflowers in the other. The ministers froze. You could have heard a quill drop. One of them spluttered, You can't just. I just did, carry on. Don't mind me, I said cheerfully, stepping right onto the polished jade floor. Zhao Yunxiu's expression could have turned milk sour. Liang Yun, you are interrupting a state discussion, he said in that perfectly controlled tone of his. Ah, good. I'm excellent at interruptions, I said. He exhaled. What is that in your hand? A gift. For the emperor who forgets to go outside, I said, and tossed the wildflower at him. It landed perfectly in his lap. Radish barked approvingly. The ministers all looked horrified, as if I'd just committed treason via bouquet. Zhao Yunxiu stared at the flower, then at me. You walked into my court, covered in mud, to give me a weed? He said slowly. Not a weed. A free-spirited flower with no respect for authority. Like me, I corrected. A few younger officials snorted before pretending to cough. His Majesty's lips twitched, once, twice, before he gave up completely. The tiniest laugh escaped. You are impossible. I get that a lot. Before anyone could react, I crossed the floor, leaned up, and kissed him. Quick, soft, very public. The gasps that followed could have powered the palace for a week. When I pulled back, Zhao Yunxiu's ears were bright red, but he didn't push me away. In fact, he smiled, slow and dangerous. You are testing royal patience, Liang Yun. I grinned. And you're still terrible at hiding when you like it. The ministers looked ready to faint. Radish wagged his tail, and the emperor of the realm, my once uptight, rule-obsessed partner, simply shook his head and said, Dismissed. They scattered faster than bandits seeing a dragon. As the hall emptied, Zhao Yunxiu turned to me, still holding the flower. You always bring chaos wherever you go. Chaos is healthy, keeps your ministers young, I said. He raised a brow. And you? Oh, I'm timeless, I said smugly. He laughed again, really laughed, and pulled me closer, ignoring the mud smearing his robes. You know, I told you once that flowers look good on you, I murmured. He leaned in, voice soft but sure. Only when you're the one who picks them for me. Radish barked again, as if declaring the line legendary. And just like that, the empire's most disciplined ruler kissed his so-called free-range consort in the middle of the grand hall. Both of us still soaked in mud and sunlight. Freedom and order. Wild and royal. Somehow it worked. If anyone asks how a wanderer ended up taming an emperor, I'll tell them the truth. I didn't. We just learned to walk the same road. And if I occasionally disappear for a week, only to barge into court with another flower and a smirk, well, that's balance too. Because some people build empires. Others make sure they don't get too tidy. And I, Liang Yun, former vagabond, accidental consort, part-time revolutionary, and full-time troublemaker, have finally found the perfect life. Unruly, unbound, loved,